Welcome to the Rhett Sever podcast. Okay, so today we are talking about existentialism with the great comedian Mike Kaplan. So basically, yeah, I was interested in talking about this because, I'm a person who overanalyzes and overuses my brain. Anyway, and so, mind altering substances that I've done, like edibles, and more recently the other day with LSD, I guess it just kind of makes you more of like who you are, they say, I guess. And so I've really gotten into this whole existentialism thing. And I know that Mike Kaplan is a very smart person and will have very smart ideas and perspectives on this subject as well. And so basically, I was raised Mormon and, always kind of thought that was, always suspected it was BS because I just, you know, I don't know, have more of a rational mind. I don't know. Maybe because I was gay, I don't know. But whatever, so thank God I was gay. But and so basically, whatever happened there happened and I escaped to New York, as I say. And yeah, so eventually I got more open-minded finally because I guess I made the mistake of putting all drugs in a bad category and kind of opened my mind to realizing that, they're not necessarily all bad. You can have fun with some mind altering substances in moderation, like all things. Like, not all things are all bad and all good. Everything is a mix of both. And like that's one of the crazy things you actually learn if you overthink things on acid. Okay, so basically for me, existentialism is basically the universe, instead of existing in this vacuum of nothingness and darkness or whatever that alternate thing could be. Instead of doing nothing, it's just doing something. So basically, like, for example, me and Mike are sitting here doing something because it's better than doing nothing. So for me, that's existentialism in a nutshell. And so the universe, if you are everything and know everything, I would think that's kind of boring. So then the universe is going to then create vessels like me and Mike to vicariously live a more interesting existence, pretending like we're two people, as in the universe is pretending in the simulation that is me and Mike, pretending to be, in the case of Earth, two people talking because that's, and then there's the whole history of the world, which I'm really starting to think that the whole, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, these are catalysts for which the universe uses, or in terms of all negativity, the universe has created negativity to use as the catalyst for its evolution over time. We as humans, we think like, oh, it's this negativity thing is icky, but really we're supposed to think that but the universe is more like, well, yeah, I need to create this icky thing because if everything's just good, then it won't make any sense. So I need to create this negative thing, as the catalyst for creating an interesting existence and evolution through time. This is basically and you know what's really crazy? As I realized, like, you'd think would have read this in a book, like I should have read it in a book, but I think I've just watched a lot of independent cinema and overthink things and got high. And that's basically what got me to these conclusions. Basically, I'm just saying I should read more, but anyway, maybe that's a good starting off point for Mike to jump in.
Sure. Happy to be here. First, I was excited to see. how long it would be until I was called upon before I was conjured as a conversational partner, because I loved listening to everything that you said, and I have a few questions for you.
Okay,
First, I
cool.
want to offer that existentialism is a word that I would say, like, if I didn't look it up, which I did,
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't be able to provide as clear a definition as I'm going to now, based
Oh,
on reading it from Merriam-Webster.
okay.
So it's a philosophical movement embracing diverse doctrines, but centering on analysis of individual existence in an unfathomable universe and the plight of the individual who must assume ultimate responsibility for acts of free will without any certain knowledge of what is right or wrong or good or bad. So it does go along with a lot of what you said.
Oh, nice.
And also, I think, I don't know if this is from dictionary.com, but just whenever if I Google existentialism definition, it says a philosophical theory or approach which emphasizes the existence of the individual person as a free and responsible agent, determining their own development through acts of the will, which I don't know how much you've read, thought, or watched, listened to things about the idea of free will. Where I've come to is, it seems to me, my understanding is that we don't have any, but it's much better and more practical to act as though we do, think that we do, feel that we do, at least just in case we do. Like, because if you're like, if there's no free will, why do anything? Why don't I just sit here for 80 years and then, oh, look at that. I guess that was my destiny. But if you're like, well, why don't I, make some music or make a podcast or become a comedian? And then after the fact, the thing that I believe about, here's my take on fate or destiny, is like, you can look back and be like, wow, look at all this is what was meant to be, because it is what is. So there's no way it could have happened any different to get to now, or it at least didn't happen any different to get to now. But to look into the future and say, so my destiny is going to be, for me, it's only a backwards looking thing. We only know I only know, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I only know, if I know anything, I know what's happening now, maybe, and what happened before, maybe. What's happening later, I know, that's what I'll say. I know less about what's happening later than what's happening now and before. So, uh, I'm also my girlfriend Rini, who I live with, is I'm in our living room. She is in our bedroom, and she has sent me a few texts because she can hear me talking. And the last one says ignore me, but I will not. Uh, and the Ayn Rand created a philosophy of selfishness whose name was already taken, so she changed it to objectivism. So for anyone,
Oh,
if you want to get started in reading, I mean, I think there's other places to get started as well. But a question I have for you uh, will happen after I say this one last thing based on what you said. The idea that, to speak of ourselves as individuals and also to speak of the universe, like, it's a very human thing to divide into these categories, like, man versus nature, like humans and animals, us and the universe, where, we are part of nature. There's no, where does nature start and stop? Like, everything is nature. Humans and animals, a human is a type of an animal. Of course, it makes sense that we think of non-human animals as distinct from human animals, but also there are reasons. I'm not going to go down that non-human rabbit hole right now, but a rabbit is a non-human. And with respect to us and the universe, it's not. I think Alan Watts said, we don't come into the universe, we come out of it. That we are the universe. Like, so to think of, like, when you say things like, or when we say things like, humans think this, or, like, first of all, when we say things like humans think this, like, right now, the only thoughts as a human that I have access to are my own. Like I believe you when you share your thoughts with me. And so if you tell me you think something, I can be like, Rhett thinks this. And then as it gets farther and farther away from people who we're directly communicating with, you know, you can see, somebody might tweet something, somebody might post something, and then we can guess what they might be experiencing to make them post that, to lead them to speak or write or however express those ideas. But sometimes we don't know what we're saying, what we're doing, what we're thinking. And so a thing I like that I heard once is don't compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. And all we see is other people's outsides. And all we have of ourselves is our insides. Other people can see us from the outside. We can see ourselves from the inside. I can see you from the outside. You can only see out from the inside. And so the question that I have for you is, when you talked about on edibles and on psychedelics, like finding that it perhaps helps you or allows you to be more yourself. Who are you? Like what are some characteristics of the self that you feel you are more of because of these substances, because of these experiences? That is my question. Who are you, Rhett?
I I think maybe who I am is maybe more of a lost person. Or I started out more as a lost person than most people because, in school, in church, and everything, more people fit in. So more people didn't have to fight against that uncomfortability than I did. So I, you know, fit less in. And so I had to come up with ways to make life more comfortable because I was uncomfortable. Right. I was like short and gay and everything. Okay. So, um, but the thing is that's good because that was the catalyst for my evolution. Because if you're a survivor, that's where the whole like, meek will inherit the earth idea comes from, and so I think who I am is, um, since I was more of that lost person starting out, I'm trying to, journey myself out of the darkness, right? And so in that, I am a person who overthinks things and really tries to think about things. And so when I'm on edibles or something like that, that's what I do is I overthink what the universe is about. And what I assumed that everybody did that, but I'm realizing that um that's just me. Not a lot of people do that. Fortunately, I was with some friends the other day who are like that as well, and that was amazing. But a lot of people just are, if they're like a person who likes to relax, and they just relax more, or whatever, right? But I happen to be the person who just I like overthink and overanalyze things because I was so lost, I guess, as a kid that that was the, I don't know, I guess the catalyst for who I am. And so um in that, I'm realizing, like, for example, like religions are just, they over time they evolve, like, for, I don't know what the word, multi-theistic, like the Greek and Roman gods, like that was interesting for me because in school they didn't, I guess because of the whole separation of church and state thing, they didn't emphasize that people really believed in the Greek and Roman gods back in the day. I assumed it was just a fun story they were telling, but I realized, oh wait, no, people really believed as the Greek and Roman gods were their gods back in the day. And that really opened my mind and made me realize, like, oh right, because then it became monotheistic because that's more in in reflection of what the universe is. It's just one big universe. So basically over time we are, as humans evolve, our religion or our God complex, creationism complex, whatever complex, um, just evolves over time. So we have a bunch of gods because there's a bunch of things in the world, right? We like you were saying, our different compartmentalizations of our existence, man versus nature, and so on and so on. Um, but then so we think there's a bunch of gods, but then we realize, well, no, there's probably just one. Let's make it simple. And we just evolve to this state of what is a more reflective of the universe. And I think the next generation is just going to, evolve and get closer, because I think, a lot of religions are, their population is going down. And what's interesting is that the only religious population that's going up is the only one that doesn't recruit. And think this is so interesting because, um, with and it's or actually, it'd be interesting. Can you guess which um which religion that is? The only one that's going up.
My guess is that you're speaking of atheists
Um,
or
oh,
Jews.
it's in terms of yeah, Jews. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
how
in
about
terms
that?
of an organized religion.
I
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, like because they just have good retention, and so their population goes up with just that's how population growth works.
Hmm.
And then all the other religions are going down, and it's just kind of funny that the only religion that doesn't recruit is the only one that's going up. but but yeah, I guess with atheists, that's more of like a just I guess a way of thinking as opposed to like a religion, right? Like,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Um,
But
One
yeah.
thing I want to also add is that there are 1 billion, I believe more than 1 billion Hindus today, and they don't have monotheism. So it isn't necessarily just a chronological, journey for certainly for your culture, for our culture, for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, who share the same mono god, essentially. And also, I mean, argument could be made that now I'm not a Christian, but the idea that there was the monotheistic God of the Old Testament, and then with Jesus, that God got divided into three. There's like, oh, so an argument could be made that there's actually more gods now for Christians than there were for Jews, even though they're like, no, 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 there's one, there's just three. Uh,
Holy Ghost, right, right.
um, Also, I want to jump back briefly to your childhood experience, which it's fascinating to me because I was also short. I was not gay, but I also did during high school have a challenging time fitting in. I had just moved when I was like 12, and so I didn't know most of the kids, and I didn't feel like I had social skills. I felt like I had gigantic glasses. I felt like everyone else knew how to dance and comb their hair, and I didn't, have all of this. And so like I did well in school academically, and I had like some other friends ish like that, and uh here's the thing is I learned later that, and I was sort of like afraid. I was like going through high school, like not I wasn't like physically in danger, it seemed like, but I felt like emotionally, like there were some kids who made fun of me. And it felt like there was more of them, even though there might not have been. I was just like, oh no, is that kid gonna be nice today? Is that some of the kids were like, up and down, and probably because they had their own emotional inner lives going on. But at the time, like, I don't, so you said you've eventually like learned to become comfortable with who you are because, I mean, thankfully you were able to because you had to. Like, this is who you are, and these challenges helped shape you. And like, you looked around and saw everyone else as like, oh, everyone else seems like they, they fit in, they know what they're doing. But again, I think this might be an example of you only know your own inner experience. And like, especially if somebody's like being an aggressor, I don't think that they are necessarily comfortable on the inside, like, just love being a bully, that's what, just, haters gonna hate, and that's me, just all good, all the way down, all the way back through my family, just come from a long line of bullies. And we don't bully each other, just the outside world. Like, actually, I read about a study that said teenagers in particular, compared to adults, are less accurate at assessing facial expressions. Particularly, the one that I remember is if you show like an array of different emotional reactions on a face to a teenager versus an adult, teenagers will be more likely to mistake a fearful expression for an angry expression. So
Oh,
this is to
wow.
say that in high school, I and maybe everyone could have been afraid, looking around, seeing everyone's afraid faces, and mistaking them for angry, and that then added to the fear. Like, oh no, why is everyone so angry? And just everyone's afraid,
Right.
which is, I think, so there's uh, a spiritual text that my girlfriend introduced me to, which is called A Course in Miracles. And one of the main tenets of this book is that essentially, like, let's say love is analogous to light, and fear is analogous to darkness or shadow. And so they're sort of like opposites in a way, but light is a measurable thing. Like like if you're standing in the light but looking the other way, then you'll see shadow. But if you turn around, then you'll see light. And you can, like, light is energy. Light is measurable. And unless we're talking about like dark matter or dark energy out in the world that we don't know about, certainly I don't know about, and even scientists are like, I don't know. Maybe they know a little more than me, but like we can't, like, how much darkness is there? I can't measure, but somebody could be like, oh, that's like a 40-watt light bulb, but there's no such thing as a 40-watt dark bulb. And so similarly, like the way that this book offers to combat like darkness, to combat fear and the things that arise from fear, is not with more darkness, it's not with more fear. It is the way how do you get rid of the dark? Not with more dark, you turn on the light. So increase the love, like, and there's a
Yeah.
book about the Course in Miracles that I believe is called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And so the idea that it also offers that everything in life is either a call for love or an offering of love. And so offerings of love are maybe clearer to spot in the wild, be like, oh, look, a loving person doing a loving thing. But when somebody's like bullying or berating or being angry or, expressing something, hurting someone, harming someone, that is in one technical sense, because they did not receive the love that would make it so they're not doing that. So they are like basically like a heckler who's just like, me, please, me, listen to me, care about me, love me, like me. And it's not necessarily everybody's job in every moment to provide that love for the person who's potentially, harming you in that moment. But it can provide some context, at least from a distance, to now for me to look back and be like, oh, I wonder, like, that kid who broke my ping pong paddle on purpose when I beat him at ping pong senior year of high school in our cafeteria, and he just like it was like there was rage on his face, and he was just like playing with my paddle because I'd been playing with it, and he was like, well, you have a better paddle. And I was like, well, play with my paddle. And then at the end of the game, when I won, he snapped this paddle in half. And at the time I was like upset and a little scared at this, very low stakes, violent, this aggressive act. But now I'm like sincerely like, what was, like, I've remembered it for, I mean, it's really, it sticks out to me. I'm
Right.
like, what was going on in that kid's daily emotional experience? What was going on in his family life? Like, he was, more popular than I was. He was, an athletic kid. He was on sports teams. Like, but I don't know anything about what his inner life is. So this is all to say, if you identify as an overthinker, it's like over compared to what? Like that the idea that there's
Yeah.
some optimal level of thinking or some average level of thinking. And again, I'm glad that you have, like-minded, like-hearted friends who you can talk about these things with. I'm also happy to be a person that that you can talk about, that I can talk with you about these things. And the final thing I'll say for now is, like, I feel very fortunate that I had this high school experience, which was challenging at times, but that over the summer, I would go to this summer camp where it felt like it was, to oversimplify it, let's say, uh, a place where artsy, outcast, misfit weirdos like myself could go, and then we were in the majority. And so that's where I learned that there are kind-hearted, compassionate, creative, like other people. I'm like, oh, you've heard the idea that like some people say, well, if everyone's special, then no one's special, but that's not true because everyone might be special in a different way. Like, everyone on the X-Men is has a power, but they don't all have the same power. They're all mutants. Like, we're all mutants. We're all our own superpowered being, and we are like your Rhett man. You're this person who is. I'm glad that you've been, discovering, like, I'm glad, like, you said that, you identified perhaps in the past as lost. Maybe you didn't even know you were lost. Maybe
Yeah.
now you're like, I was lost,
Yeah.
and now I am at least more found.
Yeah.
And that this is part of the goal is to constantly be finding and founding and refining and profounding. I'm profound. I'm pro you being found. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I know we got a little far afield from the multi gods of the past, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure to.
No, right. No, that's interesting you say that because that made me realize, oh, that's probably what the universe did. The universe was like, in my all being, all knowing everything, I have I'm too much found. So I'm going to lose myself and create negativity and lose myself so then I can then do this fun thing of going into the wilderness, losing myself and then finding myself out of the wilderness, out of the darkness. And that will be a fun journey for me, my existence, by creating negativity. That's so weird. That's what I just realized with you, like, kind of explaining all that. That's kind of interesting. And so yeah, like it's just funny because I couldn't help but think like when you were describing your childhood, you were just like this person trying to dance with messy hair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was hilarious. But yeah, and so right, that's I think one thing we learn over life is that just to love more, to combat things with love, kill people with kindness instead of more negative battle, um, whatever, darkness, right? And so I think that's what's happening with humans, right? Like we fight less wars. I think we're less barbaric. We're becoming more empathetic, especially with this generation who, we might perceive as oversensitive, but maybe they're just trying to evolve. I don't know. Or maybe they were just coddled by their parents. I don't know. But whatever the case, and again, that's just the limited perspective of the Western world. Like you were saying, like with the Hinduism, there are other perspectives of viewing things. You're right. Which is also one of the things when we were tripping on acid, we kept saying perspective, perspective. um, and so, yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, I think, yeah, that was a lot of what I wanted to cover. And um, that was, yeah, very interesting whole like story and explanation because yeah, it's funny how like then we get down to like bullying because that really defined a lot of our traumatic past, right? Is like, kids who were just randomly bullies and how, that was, the catalyst for which we eventually found ourselves because we were like, wait, why would somebody be like that? And then you realize, when you're an adult, it's like, oh, it's probably just because their parents got divorced, or maybe they're a little bit bisexual and they don't know how to deal with that. So they go to school and they call people a bunch of faggots because they're insecure, like, and that's the irony, is that they're straight. It's not that like, oh, everything is completely bad for this person in like normal sense, right? Like, at least they're still straight, but like they're a little bit bisexual, and so they're just, they're thinking, oh, if I call a bunch of people gay, nobody will suspect that I'm a little bit gay or whatever. um but that's the funny thing, is like, then I used to say like, "Oh, I wish I knew this when I was younger, because then I could just, when I happened to be the faggot that got in that bully's way that day, um, I could be like, I don't think this is about me and my sexuality. I think this is just about you dealing with your parents being divorced, and I understand that. This is cool." But then that's another thing, is that sometimes, you try to use love to fix a situation, but then that just makes them more angry.
There's
And
have you
yeah.
seen the movie The Night Before? It's
No.
a Christmas Eve movie from like 5 years ago, from 2015, I believe. Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it's like
Oh,
three
I've heard of this.
friends
Yeah.
on their last like Christmas together before everybody's lives change. And there's
Oh,
one part where I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is like upset about a lot of stuff, and he gets into like a brief physical altercation with like two drunk guys who are, just friends playing Santa. And they're like bigger than him, and they're kind of like have him in a headlock, and like he's saying things that make them understand that he's going through stuff. And one of them's like, I feel like this might be about something else. And then Joseph Gordon-Levitt's
right.
character is like, no, this is about this and only this. And so
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, like, for sure, like, here's a couple things. One, at the People's Improv Theater years ago, I saw this sign backstage that I really, really resonated with me. It said, "The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now."
Yeah.
So, like, it would have been wonderful if you had all of these insights in real time,
Right.
to understand, to be compassionate and empathetic for a person who at the time was making you feel that you were, not that you didn't fit in or however you felt.
Yeah.
And of course, it seems like wise to recognize that saying to somebody in that moment, be like, hey, are you mad at me because you're really mad at your parents because you're really sad at home? Like,
Yeah.
perhaps there's a person who would be like, yes, I'd really like to open up about that. But there might also be a person who's like, I don't know. So the way to love, like love isn't a one size fits all
Right.
situation. Like, I've had to learn that like sometimes when people tell me about a challenge they're facing, that they might want advice, but they might just want to be venting. And there's a paradigm that I've heard about where it's like you can ask a friend, like, when you're telling me about the situation, do you want a cheerleader or do you want a coach? And like a coach is like maybe point things out to you about your own behavior that you've requested, that you're like, okay, yeah, what do I do, like how do I fix this, how can I see things differently? Whereas sometimes we would just want a cheerleader to be like, yeah, that person was the villain, even if in our mind we're like, there are no villains, everyone is the recipient of their own karmic experience, whatever, however you want to think about it. And
Yeah.
so sometimes, like, the way to love someone, like, I think a very good way to love someone is to listen to them and see what they are asking for. Like, are they asking for anything? Are they asking for advice? Are they asking for an ear, for a friend? Are they asking for quiet? Are they asking for space or time?
Yeah.
And so for me, I used to like err on the side of being like, well, here's what you should do,
Mhm.
uh, knowing knowing now, even I know intellectually that that doesn't necessarily work because a person has to be looking for advice in order to for the advice to make any sense to offer. They have to be looking to change and asking for help doing it in order to to make any strides in that direction. So sometimes like the way to be loving is just to be, quiet and understanding
Yeah.
when somebody is going through something.
Yeah, it's kind of like just because, because people probably get discouraged, like they're trying to be good and use love, but then it doesn't work, and not to be discouraged by that, but to then find that's where, like, right, where, what kind of um tool you need to use on the spectrum of love in that moment, and to always try to find the right place in the right situation, right? And that's
Yeah,
basically what life is. It's calibrating our love spectrum.
that's a wonderful way to put it. And here's an example. Last night, I do this thing. I think it's called Comedians on Call, where there are like senior centers where there might be some seniors who are interested in having a conversation or hearing jokes, and I matched up comedians get matched up with seniors, so it might be one person or a couple on a phone call. And so last night I was talking to these three folks, and like I'll ask them about their lives and like if they have any jokes they want to share or anything they want to offer.
Cool.
And this woman Rose told me that as a child, uh, her parents were both deaf, and so she would sometimes be like, their hearing ears out in the world if they were all walking around. And she said one time when she was like 6, they were walking, and her father had dropped something out of his coat but didn't realize it, and somebody had was behind him, had picked it up and was trying to get his attention, but he's deaf. So at a certain point, he's like, "Hey, what guy, buddy? Hey, what's your problem? I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to help." And eventually, like this little girl turns around because she's scared. She's like, "Oh, you're talking? He's deaf. He can't." And he's like, "Oh, but that's an example of a guy trying to help, trying to do a loving thing, but being stymied by a thing that he couldn't comprehend. He's like, it felt like an affront that this man was ignoring him. Like, obviously, once we find out, and it's almost always like, it's not always easy to get to this point, but a misunderstanding that there's like, if somebody is, if I am cranky or if I am angry, if I like, it's possible that there are reasons out in the world like that could make me feel that way, but those reasons often exist and I don't feel exactly that way. So it could be that I haven't eaten enough, haven't drunk enough water. Water's very important. Haven't gotten enough rest, or whatever. I might have had just another interaction that made me feel a specific way. And this another point that I really like that I learned once that I appreciate and enjoy sharing is that it's always good, it's beneficial to think about our own soul, so to speak, whether you believe in the soul or not, but our own soul and other people's stomachs, because we never know what's going on. Like, what can we do to help people? Like, we can listen and we can know that sometimes we need help in ways that it's hard to express, and that other people must be going through those things as well. And so that's why my inclination to be like, here's what you should, if I were you exactly, then I'd do whatever you were going to do. If I were me, then I'll do whatever I'm going to do. And the only thing that we have, if any, control over anything is our own thoughts, actions, behaviors, mindsets. And so it can't necessarily make someone else do something differently, but we can hopefully change our I'm sorry, I don't know if you ever heard this word before, but perspective.
Yeah.
Perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think our next step in evolution is to basically harness the negative things that happen to us, and appreciate the good that comes from it. And so, like, like that's every episode of Oprah ever. We just have to be more like Oprah. Like, she takes something that is bad that happened to somebody and then tells their story, but then is like, but this and this and this is good things that happen because of it. And so like, because like I did a podcast about science fiction before this, and it basically the last years of science fiction was basically about, how the robots are going to rebel, and or how much we are just drug our senses, make basically pretend like we're everything's okay when it's not. And so basically, instead of that whole storyline, I think the next evolution, at least in our science fiction, should be like, in like for example, like I want to write something, a science fiction story, and one of the examples of a scene is like two women like meeting in a supermarket, and one is like, um, "Oh, I heard your son finally got into his first car accident. Congratulations! You're gonna learn so much from this experience." And so, like, that's gonna be like a futuristic, like instead of taking drugs or pretending like things are bad, or inventing a robot to do our service for us, but then that doesn't work. All this kind of stuff that is in the past, our next evolution is to embrace this thing the universe created, negativity, and harness it and appreciate the good that comes from it, no matter what happens, because bad things are going to happen no matter what. So I think a good like kind of closing could be if maybe we could think of like recent jokes we've maybe thought of that are kind of related to existentialism or just life in general.
Sure.
um
Can I don't know if this will qualify as that, but I have
okay.
two quick things to respond. One,
Okay.
a joke idea that I have right now, so might be appropriate. And two is a story from Buddhism that I like that sort of relates. So hopefully I offer this as far as what you've said. I like the idea, like we all are familiar with the tropes of like, oh no, what if robots take over? What if robots want to kill us all? Like, and it's funny because like we are making them, and they're like, what
Yeah.
if they learn from us? Like, if humans were made in God's image and like robots are made in humans' image, we're like, how do we make the robots be nicer? Like, why don't we try to become nicer before
Yeah.
we should have the nicest people make the robots, and then the robots will be the nicest,
Yeah.
hopefully. Like we should have Buddhist monks making the robots, or
Right.
whoever. We can all try to agree. Like, let's have an election to see who becomes the scientist. And the monk's like, I don't actually want to be a scientist, but well, I'm sorry. To be kind to all of humanity, please make us robots that will help us. Um, the Buddhist story that I wonder if you've heard, that it's first very that's a very funny scene. The idea, congrats on this car accident. You're gonna learn so much. I mean, I'm reading a book right now by Pema Chodron. I've read a lot of her books. She's a Buddhist nun, an American Buddhist nun. And like one of the practices, and like we can't tell anyone else to do this, but if it makes sense for us, like if to find out like when we have an emotion that we wish we didn't, or that like feels like, if it's fear or jealousy or anxiety, like that can be a thing to delve into, be like, ooh, look, like, it doesn't have to be a car accident. It could be like, oh, what is this mood? What can I alchemize out of this mood? What is this, the fact that I'm experiencing this, what does this say about me and my life, and how can I grow from this? What can I learn? Which is, I think, the point as well of your car accident story. The old Buddhist story is, there's a family, I believe in China, of farmers on a farm, and there's parents, and there's a young man, their child, and they have a horse that runs away. And then a neighbor's like, "Ooh, bad news! Horse ran away." And the farmer is like, "Maybe yes, maybe no." And then the next day, the horse comes back with at least one, if not several, other like wild horses as friends. And they're like, "What?" And the neighbor's like, "Wow, you got new horses! That's great news." And the farmer's like, "Maybe yes, maybe no." The next day, the son is aiming to tame one of the new horses, to domesticate one of the wild horses, and it throws him and he breaks his leg. And there's the neighbor again. I don't know whether the neighbor's not living their own life, but like, oh man, your son broke his leg. That's bad news. And the guy's like, maybe yes, maybe no. And then the next day, the army comes to town, drafts every able-bodied young man to go off and fight, and because the young man had just broken his leg, he was not drafted. And the guy's like, ooh, he wasn't drafted. That's great news. And the farmer's like, maybe yes, maybe no. So the like everything is potentially a story that we're telling ourselves. Like, I think one other thing from either this Pema Chodron book or a meditation app I was doing is like, if you hear the sound of rain falling on your roof, you might be like, oh, that's beautiful. Or you might be like, oh, my picnic is ruined. But the sound of the rain is the sound of the rain and contains no inherent value to it. So we can potentially either tell ourselves whatever stories we want, or stop telling ourselves stories that aren't necessarily true and aren't helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I guess one of the jokes I was thinking about that I
Please.
kind of realized maybe after my acid trip was that our family are just people that we have to pretend to be friends with just because we happen to pop out of the same holes. And so it's kind of like this fake it till you make it, um you know, like this fake it till you make it relationship. And so I'm finally becoming actual friends with some of my family finally. So
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. And I like that joke. And I also want to, I'll end with a joke of a friend of mine from years ago in Boston. There was a comedian, still a guy. I don't know if he's doing comedy anymore, but his name is Eric Riley Moore. And this is one of the first jokes I ever heard him tell. I'm going to paraphrase it entirely. But he was like, sometimes people say, what would Jesus do? And he's like, I don't know if anyone knows what Jesus would actually do. He's like, I don't know if I know what Jesus would actually do. So I guess I would say, like, he'd do whatever I would do. He's just like, he would try to, lie to his boss and say he got the work done, but then he'd go home real quick and try to be like, oh God, what am I gonna do? Yeah, I love the idea of the main gist of it, whatever the details were, was that Jesus would do whatever I would do, which is something that I like. I was reminded of it because when you say, like, oh, maybe the universe is saying this, doing this, planning this, wanting this, like, just to bring us all the way back to one of the first things I think I said, which is that we are a part of the universe. Like, it's not us and the universe. Like, you can't spell universe without us. UNS are in universe, which is a coincidence, but it's a fun one for now. So that'll be my joke. But the fact that, like, what does the universe want? Well, at least one thing that it wants is whatever I want, whatever you want. Like, that is a joke that I wrote at some point in the past couple of years, is like still working on it. The idea that some people, like, maybe something happens and they're like, oh, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. And then somebody else might be like, that's just your own brain telling you that. It's like, yeah, and my own brain is part of the universe. So that's what I offer you.
That's cool. Well, I think whatever Jesus would do would probably just be like obnoxiously loving to the point where like everybody would just resent him and, I don't know, crucify him or something. No. But
seems like there might have been some kind of misunderstanding.
Yeah. All right. So that was really fun. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you,
That
Rhett.
was amazing. And see, like, I think I also have like natural like DMT, so like, I don't want to like overdo it with like I'm really scared of like these, drugs still, but but I'm just saying, like, PSA, like, everybody, with moderation and be responsible. I'm not saying like, go crazy, or whatever.
Oh
But
yeah, I would add that it's, if you're interested in learning more about psychedelic experience, There's a lot of, I know Michael Pollan has a new book about it. There's a
Mm.
lot of people who have written extensively, like scientific papers, as well as, individual anecdotes from people's experiences during ayahuasca ceremonies on with mushrooms. And you can learn about what is healthy, what is safe, what has been done in different cultures, and there's certain brain chemistries that might not be ideal for certain psychedelic experiences. So certainly you don't have to do anything, but if you want to, you can. I would recommend, if you want to do drugs, do research.
Yeah, cool. All right. That I think is a amazing note to end it on, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Rhett. You too.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Yep. See you.